There comes a time in life when the roles between parents and children quietly begin to shift. You spent years, maybe decades, raising them. You packed their school lunches, stayed up with them when they had fevers, worked overtime to make sure they had everything they needed. You put them first, always. But now something feels different. Maybe they no longer ask for your advice. Maybe they interrupt you mid-sentence or roll their eyes when you speak. Maybe you've started to feel invisible, like you've gone from the head of the family to an afterthought. And let's be honest, it hurts. It really does. You might be wondering, after all I've done, how did we get here? You may feel angry, frustrated, or even ashamed to admit how much their attitude bothers you. You're not alone, and you're not wrong for feeling that way. But here's the truth. Trying to demand respect from your children rarely works. Getting upset, raising your voice, or reminding them of all your sacrifices usually doesn't lead to the outcome you're hoping for. There's a better way. This isn't about controlling them. It's about reclaiming yourself, about standing tall, not just as a parent, but as a person worthy of respect, dignity, and peace of mind. In the next few minutes, we'll walk through 6 powerful steps that can help you shift the dynamic between you and your children without shouting, begging, or giving in. These are simple, graceful changes that can make a world of difference. Let's begin this journey, not to win them over, but to remember your worth. 1. Stop chasing their approval. One of the most common traps older parents fall into is trying too hard to please their adult children. You might find yourself constantly adjusting your plans to fit theirs, biting your tongue to avoid disagreement, or saying yes when your heart is quietly whispering no. At first, it feels like love, like compromise, like being a good parent. But over time, it becomes something else. It becomes a quiet erosion of your own voice. Here's the hard truth. The more you chase your children's approval, the less they tend to respect you. Why? Because respect isn't earned through self-sacrifice. It's earned through self-respect. You taught your kids how to walk, how to ride a bike, maybe even how to balance a checkbook. But have you shown them what it looks like to honor your own needs? To take up space without apology? That lesson is just as important. There's a woman I once knew. Let's call her Margaret. In her younger years, she was fierce, funny, and independent. But in her 70s, she slowly started fading into the background. She let her children dictate the schedule, control the conversations, and speak to her in ways that stung. She'd say, "I just want to keep the peace." But peace without respect isn't peace. It's silence. When Margaret finally began to set limits, declining visits that drained her, speaking up when something felt off, her children were surprised at first, but over time they began to see her differently. Not as a passive presence, but as a woman with a spine and a voice. If you've been overextending yourself, trying to earn their approval like it's a prize, you can stop. You don't need to prove anything. You've already lived, already loved, already given more than enough. Say no when it matters. Speak honestly. Honor your own boundaries. Because the moment you stop chasing respect is the moment it starts finding its way back to you. 2. Don't argue, lead by example. When your children speak over you, dismiss your opinions, or act like your thoughts no longer matter, your first instinct may be to argue. You may want to remind them of all the sacrifices you made, those sleepless nights, the packed lunches, the college tuition payments, the 20-mile drives in the snow to get them to practice. You might feel the urge to say, "I deserve better." And you do. But here's the thing. Arguing rarely gets you there. Respect doesn't grow from shouting matches or long lectures. In fact, the more we try to force someone to see our worth, the more it slips through their fingers. True respect is earned not by demanding it, but by embodying it. I once knew a man named Frank, a retired high school teacher. For 30 years, he ran a classroom full of teenagers with calm authority. But when he got home, it was a different story. His grown children talked over him, brushed off his advice, and sometimes even chuckled when he tried to correct them. At first, Frank pushed back. He argued, defended himself, tried to make them remember the man he used to be. But one day he changed course. He stopped raising his voice. Instead, he started listening, really listening. He responded with clarity, not anger. He carried himself with quiet strength, not frustration. And slowly, his children took notice. They saw not a man desperate for attention, but a man who still held his ground with grace. They began listening, not because they were told to, but because they wanted to. You don't have to prove your worth with words. You prove it by how you carry yourself. So when disrespect shows up, don't match it with more of the same. Don't argue, don't lecture, don't chase. Instead, lead by example. Speak with calm, stand with dignity. Show them what real strength looks like, not in loud voices, but in quiet confidence. And over time, they'll remember who you are, not just their parent, but a person they can look up to again. 3. Withdraw your emotional dependence. As parents, our hearts are wired to care, even when our children are grown, raising families, running businesses, living thousands of miles away. We still think about them, worry about them, and want to feel connected to them. But there's a quiet trap many parents fall into later in life, relying too much on their children for emotional fulfillment. You might wait by the phone hoping they'll call. You might feel disappointed when holidays come and go without a visit. You might start to believe that your happiness depends on how much time or attention they give you. But here's the truth. The more emotionally dependent you become, the less your children feel drawn to you, and the more they may pull away. No one, not even your child, wants to feel like they're someone's entire reason for waking up in the morning. It creates pressure, obligation, guilt. And over time, that can turn love into discomfort. I once met a woman named Helen, a widowed mother of 3. She was kind, loving, and deeply devoted. But after her husband passed, she poured all of her energy into her children. She called them constantly, left long voicemails, reminded them often how lonely she felt. She didn't mean to push them away, but that's what happened. Eventually, Helen took a different path. She started painting again, something she hadn't done since the 80s. She joined a local walking group and even started volunteering twice a week at the library. And something changed. Her phone started ringing again. Her kids asked about her schedule, wanted to hear about her projects. They saw her not just as mom, but as a whole person living a rich, full life. The lesson is simple. When you stop depending on your children to fill your emotional cup, you give them the freedom to connect with you out of love, not guilt. Your happiness is your responsibility. And the more fulfilled you are on your own, the more magnetic your presence becomes. So live fully, for yourself, and let your joy be the reason they come closer, not your need. Set boundaries and enforce them. If your children speak to you in a way that stings or dismiss your time, your values, or your presence, you might be tempted to stay silent just to avoid conflict. After all, you love them. You want to keep the peace. You might tell yourself it's not worth the fight. But here's something important to remember. People will treat you the way you allow them to, even your own children. Setting boundaries isn't about being harsh. It's not about cutting anyone off or creating drama. It's about standing firm in what you will and won't accept, because your dignity matters. There's a man I knew named Robert. He spent 35 years running a successful auto repair business. He was respected in his community, known for his fairness and leadership. But at home, it was a different story. His adult children spoke over him, criticized his choices, and expected him to drop everything at a moment's notice. For years, Robert shrugged it off. "They're just busy," he'd say. But deep down, he felt invisible. Then one day, something shifted. When his son interrupted him during a family dinner, Robert calmly said, "I'll continue when you're ready to listen." When his daughter criticized his lifestyle, he responded, "You don't have to agree with me, but I expect respect when we speak." And when they continued to push his limits, Robert drew a line. "If you can't treat me with basic courtesy, we'll talk another time." It wasn't easy, but it worked. Over time, his children began to adjust. They realized he wasn't trying to punish them. He was simply valuing himself, and that made them start valuing him too. Boundaries are not walls, they're doors. They teach others how to enter your life with care. If your children are treating you in ways that feel hurtful, ask yourself, have I made my limits clear? And if not, maybe now is the time. Because when you respect yourself enough to set boundaries and follow through, you teach everyone around you how to respect you too. 5. Stop giving without appreciation. As parents, giving comes naturally. You give your time, your money, your energy, your love, often without expecting anything in return. And for many years, that kind of giving was part of the job. It was your way of showing love. But now that your children are adults, the dynamic has shifted. If you're still constantly giving, bailing them out financially, rearranging your schedule for their convenience, jumping to help before they even ask, but receiving little gratitude or basic respect in return, it might be time to pause and reflect. Because here's a hard truth. When you give to someone who doesn't appreciate it, you don't build connection. You build entitlement. I once met a man named George, a father of 2 grown sons. George had always been generous. He helped with down payments, paid off student loans, and even watched his grandkids at the drop of a hat. But the more he gave, the less his sons seemed to notice. Thank yous became rare. Requests became expectations. And when George finally needed a ride to the doctor after a fall on his porch, both sons were too busy. That's when he realized his generosity had lost its value because it had no boundaries. So George made a change. He stopped offering help before it was asked. He began saying, "Let me think about it," instead of an automatic yes. And most importantly, he stopped giving when there was no appreciation. At first, his kids were confused, even frustrated. But over time, something shifted. They began saying thank you more often. They stopped assuming. They started recognizing that his support wasn't guaranteed. It was a gift. Giving is beautiful when it comes from love, but when it's met with silence or entitlement, it becomes a burden. So ask yourself, are you giving because it brings you joy, or because you're afraid of what will happen if you don't? You deserve to be appreciated, not just needed. When you teach others that your time, energy, and help are precious, not endless, they'll start treating them that way. 6. Build a life outside of them. For most of your life, your children were the center of your world. You were there for the school plays, the 2 a.m. fevers, the scraped knees, and the heartbreaks. You celebrated every milestone, worried over every setback, and now that they're grown, it's natural to want to stay involved, to feel connected. But here's something many parents quietly struggle with. When your whole life still revolves around your adult children, they may start to take you for granted, or worse, pull away. Why? Because people respect those who have a sense of purpose. Not just a history, but a present and a future. If your children see you as someone who's simply waiting by the phone or rearranging your days around their availability, they may start seeing you as less of a person and more of a background figure. Not intentionally, but gradually. I once met a woman named Eleanor, a 78-year-old widow with a warm heart and 3 grown kids. After her husband passed, she poured all her energy into her children's lives. Daily check-ins, unsolicited advice, constant availability. But instead of drawing them closer, it pushed them away. They visited less. Calls got shorter, and Eleanor felt more alone than ever. Then she made a decision. She joined a watercolor class at the community center. She started walking every morning with a neighbor. She even took a weekend trip to the Grand Canyon, a lifelong dream. And guess what? Her kids started calling more. Not out of guilt, but out of curiosity, admiration, and genuine love. When you live fully, when you rediscover passions, reconnect with friends, and enjoy your own company, you send a powerful message. I am still me, whole, engaged, alive. And that energy is magnetic. Your role as a parent will always matter, but it should never define your entire existence. So go ahead, take that pottery class, volunteer at the library, plan that weekend getaway. Because when you build a life that lights you up, your children won't just notice it, they'll respect it, and they'll respect you even more. Earning back your children's respect isn't about raising your voice, keeping score, or reminding them of everything you've done. It's about remembering who you are, outside of your role as a parent. You've lived through decades of change, carried weight that no one else saw, and offered love that asked for nothing in return. That alone deserves respect. But respect doesn't come when you beg for it. It comes when you embody it. Start by letting go of the need for their constant approval. Lead with quiet strength instead of arguments. Pull back from emotional dependence and show them that your happiness comes from within. Draw clear boundaries and keep them. Give generously, but only when your efforts are valued. And most importantly, build a life that excites you, not just one that revolves around them. These aren't easy shifts, but they're powerful. Because when you reclaim your voice, your dignity, and your joy, you don't have to demand respect. You inspire it. And even if your children don't change overnight, you will. You'll feel stronger, calmer, and more grounded. You'll remember that your worth was never tied to how often they call, how much they listen, or how well they behave. Your worth is already there, so take the steps one by one, not just for them, but for yourself. Because the more you value your own life, the more others will learn to value it too. You deserve to be seen, heard, and deeply respected. Not someday, but starting now. If something in today's video made you nod, smile, or think twice about yourself in a good way, let us know. Which of these signs felt familiar? Drop a comment below and share your experience. I read every single one, and your story could truly encourage someone else watching. And if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and tap the bell so you don't miss future content made just for men like you. Thanks for watching, and remember, your best years might just be the ones you're living right now.